Hello? Yes, Olga. Tomorrow at 7:30? Terrific. Oh, and you too. Bye-bye. I'm sold out. I don't know what I'm going to do. Look at these cucumbers. Isn't that, who would have thought it? Port Authority parking lot. See, you can achieve anything in life. How did it get started? It's hard to pinpoint a starting point. There must be a lot of fermenting going on within oneself before one takes a trip to Jersey and buys a barge. This is my third barge. My sister-in-law and I were talking about her newly born child, her daughter, my niece, and we were concerned about keeping the creative spirit of a child and nurturing it. So we wondered where to raise this child, and I thought, well, I think by the sea might not be bad, and we were talking about a houseboat, and she saw an ad for a barge, and it was like a piece of granite being cracked open. The whole thing was revealed to me. I could see the barge in my mind's eye. The word got around, and the idea began to grow that this would be a marvelous place to have music.
I sort of feel like a concert's a concert, and you're, you know, it's a very friendly and commodious atmosphere, of course, but nonetheless, you know, I always try to deliver the goods to the public. It's not like, you know, you're playing at some sort of party where anything goes or something. You really are trying to make the music real and optimum. That's what we're all trying to do. It only occasionally happens. So while it's going on, although I love the atmosphere and I love the idea of it, it's just as, maybe this is partly says more about me than the bars, but it's just as sober an event for me as any other concert I would play.
This barge was created for the Erie-Lackawanna Railroad, but it was just hard, dark, reverberant steel when I bought it. The whole thing had to be lined with wood. Somebody said once that walking in here is like walking inside a cello. The wood is of the proper thickness to resonate agreeably in this room with music. It's cherry wood. I took it off an old Staten Island ferry. I carried it stick by stick for a year and a half in my old Volkswagen. I had a glorious time. The Volks would be laden with wood, and I would ride about 4 inches above the ground, and truck drivers would honk at me and yell, "Hey, mama, you!"
One of the things that I find really nice about it is there's so much wood here. I don't find it to be overly live, even empty. I think it's a nice sort of woody, solid sounding space. When it gets really packed, as it generally is these days, and as I take it, it will be this evening, it actually becomes, I think, a little on the dead side. You get to where things have just a tad of that radio studio quality, where you feel like the sound's falling out of the instrument and falling on the floor, not even bouncing once, which can be a little disconcerting, but that's of course the trade-off for having the experience of playing for lots and lots of people, which is really nice. I mean, just the bodies and the clothing soak up lots of sound. So we wind up with a space that is somewhere between ideal and a little bit dry, but nothing problematic. I think it's a really nice space in which to play.
What is unique to this concert hall is that it rocks. And I recall a concert that Joe Villa was performing in, and suddenly the barge took a great surge and the piano rolled right into his lap. I'll never forget the astonishment on his face. Everybody stopped playing. And when it quieted down, we resumed.
And when the tide starts swelling, and if I'm standing, last season, for example, I played a sonata here, and a couple of seasons before that also, it can be quite a challenge to, you start, it's relaxing in a way, because you stop thinking about the microcosms of this or that little finesse of what you're going to play, and you're just very grateful to stay on your feet. It's a major triumph if you haven't fallen down in front of the entire audience, which sometimes can allow you to play better, because it gives you a problem of greater magnitude to concentrate on. I think what we're both experiencing right now is sort of a medium amount of swell. And it's enough, you know, if you're really focused on what you're doing, particularly visually focused on some music. If a person is given to motion sickness, you might find yourself approaching the Dramamine moment. I think that the experience of coming to a place like this to hear a concert has a little bit of a built-in festive quality to it. I mean, from the time we're brought up, if you go to the water, it's to recreate in some way. And here we are sitting right on the East River and swaying with the tides and looking out at the beautiful New York skyline. And I suppose it's maybe somewhere between Carnegie Hall and a concert in Central Park, but it is a very learned and well-informed audience.
Oh, just be. fresh and different. Every program that's given here is fresh and different. It's marvelous, infinite variety, infinite variety. The well never runs dry. For instance, we have musicians who come from abroad to play here. People come here from Israel, they come here from the Netherlands, from England, from France, and we hear the different styles, different characteristics in their playing, and their interpretations vary. And even among the Americans, they're like fingerprints. Everyone is different, and you become aware of these subtleties because you're in a small room and listening to very few people. You become aware of the individual characteristics. In the beginning, I would look up the hill and pray for a fifth person to come and be in attendance. But, you know, if you endure, and I lived on the barge, you know. I lived on the barge for 5 years. I sat in the middle of the floor and played, and I said, this is not really a concert, but it's to give you the idea that it's intended for music and for you to hear music in this space. As the attendance grew, so did the public awareness of what I was doing here, and a lot of people thought it would be a nifty idea to do the same thing. They'd like to live on a barge on the waterfront. And that's when the city told me to get off, because they were afraid, I guess, that it would become the Yangtze River here. Since there was no precedent for what I was doing, nobody could say it was illegal or legal or proper or improper. It was baffling, so I continued to exist. Schools are producing fabulous players by the horde, and somehow nobody has found a solution for employing young artists who deserve to be in a situation where they can make creative choices when they play. And if they play in an orchestra, they are under the dictate of the man with the stick. And I'm very sympathetic, particularly to string players who have to play in large blocks and sections of 12 or so. And if you stick out, you're fired. You know, you have to play en masse, so to speak. It's a different sensitivity. But chamber music has always been regarded as an elitist practice. And I think what we've been doing here for 23 years is explaining that chamber music is simply a few musicians in a room instead of in a hall. I was a musician all my life. And I wound up just being an adept New York musician. One day one would play in the ballet, another day one be in a studio, and most days you could get a job in the theater. And I was never out of work. I worked all my life. At least I made enough money to buy the barge. And what had to be done, I was glad to do. I was glad to put in a sewage treatment plant. Although that's another difficulty. You go out and raise money for a sewage treatment plant. It has been suggested to me that the barge go up on pilings, and it would. And I insist it's against my religion. I would not want to be merely a pretty place. I think that true beauty always has a touch of terror lurking under the surface. That's reality. And I think that getting an occasional jolt and losing your balance a little bit is healthy. It's a reminder of our mortality. it's hard to survive in the city, and I felt that one needed a stretch of sky, and I was grateful for the river, and I think that music is totally in empathy, or perhaps it is nature itself. I think music is a product of nature. I think everyone who comes here will agree with you that the motion of the water, the flight of the seagull in the middle of a passage by Beethoven is an enchanting thing. And above all, I think it's terribly important to see the sky higher than the skyscrapers across the river. And that also tells you something. And yet, rocking here and listening to profound music, when we see that stretch of sky, we're comforted and we feel safe for a while, in spite of the fact that we're rocking. There was a great Italian producer who came here to visit, and he looked across the river at Wall Street, and he said to me, "How frail you are." And I live in that understanding. But we continue to live.